right, good morning. It is the 27th of August 2024, a very significant date for many Kenyans. We're marking exactly 14 days since the Constitution was promulgated.
14 years, you mean?
14 years. I said 14 days.
14 days. Yeah.
14 years. 14 years since the promulgation of the Constitution back in 2010. Karibu sana, this is a morning cafe. Also a very big day for Raila Odinga. Najua we've been launching very many projects.
Yes.
Leo tuna launch Raila Odinga. Yes. My name is Fred Ndimuli.
Oh, yes.
This is hotter than your coffee.
Wacha leo nisalimie watu na Kikisii. Ni jaribu tu.
Jaribu.
Mwavokire.
Haya.
Wanasema tuavokire pia.
Tuavokire pia.
I'm yours truly, Stanley Nyarungete. It's a Biashara Tuesday. We'll be discussing matters business. I'll be telling you all about that in a few. But then, as you say, the big conversations today surrounding the AUC and other politicals. Watu wamerudi serikali.
Wengi sana. Plus, there's another thing that happened yesterday. Once President William Ruto attended the Pass Out parade for the NYS, he announced that the NYS will now receive firearms training. What do you think about that? NYS, wafunzo maneno ya bunduki.
Boom tuambie, 22047 is our SMS number.
NYS wakipita hivi
267279 WhatsApp number yetu. Ziko pale chini, mtuambie.
Okay. We'll be looking at some of these discussions with my panelists this morning. Basil Robert Ngui, that's the MP Yata constituency. Dismas Mokua makes a comeback on the panel, political risk analyst. Another MP, David Kiplagat, for Soi constituency. And Pamela Odhiambo, former woman representative, Migori County. They will be in studio
for that panel, this one.
Yes.
Bright minds. Another bright mind, Caroline Wanjeri. She is the director on matters mortgages, Uko KCB. She'll be telling you why you really need to take a mortgage and the do's and don'ts on taking a mortgage. It was one of those things that people see, but then wana avoid kidogo. To the dailies, man of the moment.
All right, yes, Niliwambia. Today we are launching this great man. Man of the moment, Raila Odinga, and I like the photo they've chosen. Very huge green on his face in his typical blue. That's the front page of the Standard this morning. What do we have with the Daily Nation? Standoff.
One word.
Matters education and the crisis. Yesterday, a meeting between KUPPET and the Labour Ministry failed to resolve the standoff. So it means teachers for secondary schools and beyond are on strike, and yet schools are opening this week.
Kwenye gazeti la Taifa Leo, Raila pia ndio the big man. Nasema Raila kuaga leo siasa za Kenya. It is one of those moments that is going to be historical, by the way.
Yes, I'm told at least 5 presidents will be attending this event. It starts at 8 a.m. this morning. We should be beaming the same live from State House.
On the Star, Ruto Raila deal to hasten law review. Back to tell you all about this.
Now that they're together, they could do a lot with the numbers they have in Parliament and the goodwill that they have across the country. That's a big headline on the Star this morning. On Business Daily, motorists overpay 16 billion shillings. Feel that pain in fuel deal with Gulf Farms. Ile ilikuwa inaitwa G2G. It would appear there were some savings, but those savings were not transferred to the consumer.
Wow. Kuna
kampuni zimekula hiyo pesa.
All right, on the front page of People Daily, Gen Z is back. The front page of
this one they forced it. This one they forced.
And I'll be telling you something about Gen Z in a few on our news diary and why it is important for Gen Z today. They say why Ruto fees model must collapse. This was an event that happened on Sunday at KICC, a town hall kind of a meeting, and Gen Z stood up with the mic wakasema, Rais William Ruto, wacha kutudanganya.
This affects you directly, the Gen Z.
Yes.
Kama mutaweza, shauri yenu.
Alikuwa nasema HELB alichukua sijui 19 what na bado na HELB ilianzishwa.
No, alisema loan, hakusema HELB.
Okay.
To the cleanest paper in this side of Africa. I think this is the cleanest paper.
Oh, yes, it has.
Or at least the front page in East Africa. That's the Daily Monitor in Uganda. One farm's trash is another's cash, and they don't have trash. Although they are talking about trash, they don't have a lot of garbage on the front page.
After the physical paper of Daily Monitor one of these days.
Yes. Wanakonga meipanga vizuri sana on the front page. They say trash talk. They talk about while cities, municipalities and urban centers are struggling to get rid of the garbage, companies in government and private ones are not wasting any. They are generating electricity and fertilizers worth millions of shillings every month. And this comes from that tragedy that was linked to waste dumping at Kitezi. Now they're looking at possible ways of handling waste and garbage. So they have a special report on pages 4, 5 and 6.
Oh, yes. And even before you cross over to the new vision, Uganda's speaker Anita Among is back on the front pages. And now it is quite important even for the Ugandans because the Gen Z there also went to the streets saying, Anita must go.
No, there was only one person who went to the street. Akafukuzwa, walipigwa tu kofi moja, protest ikaisha. Still in Uganda, we'll take a look at the new vision. Matters coffee exports set 780 billion shillings record. Well,
Ugandan shillings.
this is in Uganda. Either way, they're talking about their exports hitting records. Meanwhile, in
That's
Kenya,
big,
the coffee discussion, even tea, is a problem. Higher yields recorded in Greater Masaka, Southwest regions. And I saw somewhere, I don't know if it's true, that the Deputy President intends to hold a town hall himself to talk about coffee matters and tea exports.
Interesting.
I don't know. If he does, it will be interesting to see what he has to
Walimwambia
say.
relax your role kwanza.
This is in Uganda, Matters Agriculture on the front page of the New Vision. The Speaker of the Parliament, Anita Among,
And her twins.
and her twins,
Yes.
Papa Francis. Oh,
Interesting.
interesting photo there. All right.
As much
She's
as
seeking
she,
forgiveness.
as much as she has been,
Now to the busiest.
amefukuzwa to other countries. Kwenye gazeti la
the
Mwananchi,
busiest front page ever, Mwananchi.
it has about 42 stories on this front page. The big conversations, mapya mauaji, miili kuzikwa kwa mganga. Now you never see some of these headlines in Kenya, by the way.
You can't. Mganga.
Mganga tena sijui nini. This is only in Tanzania.
Wanasema jeshi la polisi latangaza kuwashikilia watu 7 kwa tuhuma ya mauaji ya watu 3, miili miwili yatambulika, mmoja kusubiri DNA. Mauaji, miili kuzikwa kwa mganga. Masuala ya ushirikina huko. Mbu wa mjini wazidi kuwa tishio nchini. Huko Dar es Salaam kuna mosquito kweli kweli.
And then for this story, you'll always realize on most dailies in Tanzania, they always have a certain focus when it comes to children and the safety of children. Hapo nasema changamoto za usalama, makuzi kwa shule za chekechea. Kila wiki nenda, you'll always see some of these stories.
Right. Gazeti la Mwananchi. Tuangazie The Citizen. Still in Tanzania, manufacturing sees robust growth amid renewed hope. They said Tanzania's manufacturing sector has grown significantly in the last 5 years, posting a 67% increase in export earnings, despite still trailing behind non-traditional exports in terms of overall value. Yes, this one, in as far as trade is concerned, very positive news.
Coming from Uganda as well as Tanzania, you realize
come
that.
back to Kenya, they're talking about vile tumegongwa kwa fuel when it comes to the business daily. But ukienda huku wanasema, we, usijali, we are growing
Sisi
67%, nini.
Ni kama si one of these days. Hata kama ni stories za jaba, tuweke tu tuambie.
Sometimes we are a bit too negative, I think, in Kenya. If you look at the other dailies, there's a lot of hope. Right, let's come back home. Before we take a look at the cartoons, let's come back home and take a look at the traffic situation in Nairobi this morning. All right. Major roads are busy this morning. I can see a lot of that Haile Selassie roundabout next to Marikiti is already building up. It's a dark red on both sides. You can see this is the area I'm talking about. Railway bus stop, Haile Selassie heading towards that roundabout where it links up with Landis Road. It's usually very busy on both sides of the road. Pali easy Kochina Kwanga up Marikiti area. Matatu zimefika town. So that one you expect a lot of trouble. If you can avoid this area this morning, it will save you a lot of time. You could, if you're coming from Jogoo Road, you could use other routes. Let's take a look at Jogoo Road, and this is normal traffic now, building up slowly in areas like Makadara, Mbotela, Likoni Road, heading towards City Stadium roundabout. Nothing much to worry about, but yes, the usual trouble spots are along that route. The other problem usually is at Pangani interchange, and you can see the trouble is just before you get to the interchange, immediately after the Mathare Hospital. Before you get to Pangani. Pangani is looking good. Green all the way, either using Muranga Road or Wangari Maathai Road towards town.
Hata hiyo nini kutokea Kiambu Road ni nywe pia.
Kiambu Road inanga saa hii watu wanaenda 200 kilometers per hour kwa hii barabara. But within no time itakuwa imeshikana.
Imeshikana pia na.
So this is the best time for you to travel and head towards town. Mombasa Road is looking good all the way. It's nywe, green all the way to town. Langata Road too. Nothing much to report past Carnival, Uhuru Gardens, all the way to the T-Mall roundabout, and Magadi Way looking good as well. Ngong Road, nothing much to report all the way past Junction to the city's mortuary roundabout. And yes, and nowadays this road, Wayaki Way, has a bit of a problem around Nairobi School area.
School, yeah.
It's just a slowdown because of the bumps, but after that, nothing to worry about. It is smooth all the way into town. So that's the traffic situation. Major trouble spots, Haile Selassie Avenue, Jogoo Road is normal, and Pangani interchange is normal as well this morning.
Oh yes, that is how the roads are looking like as you're planning to leave the house right now. Kama uko na ka interview mahali, ama unaenda kuona mtu sahi asubuhi. But then even as you do that, let's take a look at in different regions so that you know how you're going to be dressed for this particular day. Do you need a jacket? Do you need to dress warmly? In Muranga, it is 18 degrees Celsius, but then it is raining actually right now.
It is raining.
Yes, and it's going to stop raining, then some cloudy conditions, but then it promises to get warmer, so jihami na ka jacket, but then it's going to get warmer into the day. That is in Muranga. In, let's take a look at, let's go to Mombasa, kabla tukuje hapa Nairobi. 24 degrees Celsius as of 6 a.m. Then ile 24, lakini bado kuna manyunyu asubuhi. You are there inakuwa very interesting. 28 degrees Celsius promises to get even warmer into the day.
You know, at 24 degrees Celsius and it's raining, you might just as well shower in the rain.
Yeah, true. Yeah, iko sawa sawa. That is in Mombasa. In Marsabit, all the way to the northeastern part of the country, it is cloudy, 17 degrees Celsius, but then it definitely promises to get warmer into the day. And you realize the trend from all the places that we've taken a look at. Let's see in Nairobi if that trend is there. The trend I'm talking about is the sunshine coming.
It's much warmer
as well.
in Nairobi today,
yes.
16.
Yes. And so this particular trend, you'll realize that as of last week, that report that Kenya Met Department had given, cloudy conditions as of the 20th until yesterday, the 26th. I was taking a look at, I was checking your page, Met Department. They haven't updated, but then this might be the trend that you're going to see coming this week. Warm conditions into all the way ahead next week. That is how the weather is looking like. And that takes us to our diary, a couple of bits to expect for today. So first off on the page, it is Katiba Day today, and as you had alluded earlier, Katiba Institute of Kenya will today be addressing the media, among other institutions, as the country marks the 14th anniversary of the promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya. So do expect various activities in the country. And then something else now to the next page, you had alluded to earlier as well. Today at 8 a.m., President William Ruto is going to be officially launching Raila Odinga's campaign for the chairmanship of the African Union Commission. As you had said, also a couple of heads of state from different countries in Africa are also expected. Among other delegates will be beaming for you these live pictures when we do have them. And on to the next page, something else happening today. Environment Cabinet Secretary Eden Duale will today be presiding over the opening session of the African Union Consultation on Development of a Common Position on Climate Change, Peace and Security meeting. Why is this meeting important today and why we'll be looking at it? Remember the climate change conference, the COP, for this it'll go COP 29, will be coming up. So these conversations will definitely be very important. On to the next page, the Gen Z demos. So apparently, young people are expected to go back to the streets today for the anti-government protests. The last time we saw something like this for the Nane Nane, the 8th of August, nothing major really happened. Actually, the police were many.
The question is, are they even aware that they're supposed to be on the streets?
The main focus today, they say, is having a dissolution of parliament. So wait to see how that will be. Something else also happening today, Kimilili Member of Parliament, that is Didmas Baraza, was summoned by EACC and he's expected to appear today before EACC, that is Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, so do expect that as well. Also, schools, now primary schools really, because KNUT teachers said the call of the strike, so opening of schools is also expected in a number of countries, a number of counties rather. That, among others, today in history right now.
the 27th of August 2010, thousands of Kenyans thronged Uhuru Park to witness the promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. This day remains historical to many as late former President Mwai Kibaki presented the sealed document high in the air for the nation.
Right, tuangazie magazeti sasa na tunaomba kama ule jamaa utuletea magazeti hapo. Our newspaper plug. Anaweza kuwa amefungiwa huko nje. Mumwangalie tu mumfungulie gate. But anyway, we do have the e-paper, at least the front page of the Standard. The man of the moment, we're talking about the big launch for Raila Odinga's AUC chairperson's bid. Stab at AU Post, President William Ruto is today expected to officially launch Raila Odinga's AUC bid at State House, with at least 4 African presidents expected to attend. This marks a significant milestone in the political life of Raila as it cements his stature as an African statesman. And yes, the president has been busy launching and relaunching a number of projects across the country. This one is his latest project.
Sijui kama Morara Kibasa watakuwa hapa. They should invite Morara to be here.
Yes, we just hope that this one will be a successful project. Zingine zimekuwa launched na relaunched, bado hazijaanza.
Well, good thing is we always keep record. So 5 years later tutarudi tuangalie.
Early launch.
Right.
Another story there given prominence on this front page, Matters Business. More Kenyans turn to digital lenders to cope. Faced with soaring food prices, a growing number of Kenyans' households are increasingly relying on mobile loans to make ends meet. That story is on page 27. This talks about the tough times that Kenyans are going through, especially the cost of living.
And this reminds me of, I think also connected to this, the whole poor credit.
Yes.
It reminds me of what the MSME CS alluded to, I think it was last week, kingelelea how for the Hustler Fund, they'll devise a way, kama ulichukua your loan, when it defaulter, they'll devise a way on how kushika.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
All right. What poor credit score means to you, that's a story linked to Kenya's credit score. Another story, anxiety as learners troop back to school. Yes, schools are reopening this week. A number of schools opened yesterday, although reports indicate that most primary schools recorded very poor numbers. Today, most of the secondary schools open, but because of the teachers' strike, which enters its second day today, we still wait to see, and we'll be bringing you reports on what happens.
I think even for yesterday, the confusion that was there, even for parents, they are wondering, do I take my child to schools? With NAT calling off, Kuppet on strike.
Yes, remember this term, at least there's KCSE exam. For the first time in a very long time, we're not going to be having KCPE, meaning that a number of things will be different this time round. Then a highlight here, and this is a former England tactician, Sven-Göran Eriksson, who passed away yesterday. The highlight is on the front page there. Eriksson dies after a long cancer fight. And those who know football, this gentleman was one time the England team tactician, Sven-Göran Eriksson. All right, that's the Standard today.
Right. Tuangalie, nimeona plug wetu wa magazeti finally amesema.
All right, so we can even take a look at the back page.
Yes.
And the back page, yes, is dedicated to Eriksson taking a walk on to the land of no return. Sven-Göran found success as football manager after retiring as a defender. His ex-England manager, Sven-Göran Eriksson, who died at the age of 76. That's the back page of the Standard today.
Right. Let's shift gears now to the front page of Daily Nation. One there, standoff matters education. They say primary schools record low turnout even after KNUT cancelled the strike. They're calling it a deadlock. A 5-hour-long meeting between union leaders representing post-primary school teachers and government officials yesterday failed to unlock a stalemate, signaling possibility of confusion deepening today when most secondary schools are scheduled to open. That is the front page of Daily Nation this morning. The conversations on the front page of Daily Nation, on the left strip, something that is going to be big news today. Why Ruto Raila deals signal return of quote-unquote Pentagon. They say President Ruto has signaled a possible coalition with ODM leader Raila Odinga ahead of the 2027 elections. Now, the dynamics of this are going to be interesting. Today might mark the end of Raila Odinga's local politics as he steers into the AUC. But then, do you leave something completely? It's one thing to say I exit local politics.
We'll have to wait and see. Raila Odinga, ngumu sana.
And the ground that he holds, wait to see as well. Into health conversations, Palestine, Africa CDC warns of false mpox results. So the Continental Health Body says diagnosis should not rely only on lab tests. That is on page 14. The conversations, again, something that we're asking you this morning. What do you think about this? NOS recruits will be trained on handling firearms, something that President William Ruto said yesterday during the pass-out parade for the National Youth Service in Gilgil. And they say 14,692. This is the number of recruits who graduated from the National Youth Service yesterday. Pale juu, from mechanic to police chief, Eliud Lagat's meteoric rise. That is on page 2. Can flip on to there. They say his dream before joining the National Police Service was to work for big motor vehicle garage. Interesting. He is Douglas Kanja there, pictured as well on page 2, as well as the Deputy Inspector General Eliud Lagat, who was also the acting Inspector General for a while before Douglas Kanja was approved by the National Assembly. Other conversations, Mombasa Cement and SSF feud over 350 million Kenya shillings land. That is on page 10. And let's flip to the back page. They say MPs question veracity of 5 billion Kenya shillings IEBC owes lawyers. But as IEBC revived, the Commission CEO says hiring of external lawyers was okayed by the Attorney General. That in a nutshell is what is on the Daily Nation. Tuangazie gazeti la Taifa Leo.
Raila kuaga leo siasa za Kenya. Hiyo ndio habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Anasema angaa marais watano wa nchi za Afrika watarajiwa kuhudhuria uzinduzi wa kampeni za Raila katika ikulu ya Nairobi. Gazeti hili linasema kwa heri. Raila anatarajiwa kutoweka katika siasa za Kenya, lakini je, unaamini hayo? Anapoanza kujipigia debe kutoa wadhifa wa tume ya Umoja wa Taifa wa Afrika AUC. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa pili. Je, unadhani Raila ataaga siasa za Kenya? Swali pale. Masuala mengine, mgomo wa walimu wakuu wa KNUT wakaangwa kwa usaliti. Mmoja wao ni katibu mkuu wa KNUT Collins Oyu. Wanachama wa chama cha kitaifa cha walimu KNUT jana walilalamika tukio walichokiita kama usaliti wa viongozi wao wakuu waliofutilia mbali mpango wao kabla ya serikali kutimiza matakwa yao yote. Many teachers criticizing the KNUT officials for calling off the strike that was to kick off yesterday. Meanwhile, wenzao wa KUPPET wanaendelea na mgomo. Pale juu, NIS kupewa mafunzo ya bunduki. Je, unakubaliana na haya? Rais aagiza vijana wafunzwe namna ya kutumia silaha hiyo ili wawe tayari kulinda nchi. NIS kulinda nchi. Lakini anyway. Na onyo, Chelsea ikitamba EPL, kocha Maresca aonya mvamizi Mudryk kwa uzembe, huku Blues ikiliza vikali Wolves.
So la EPL pale. And this conversation about NYS, it just popped in my mind. Now imagine future demonstrations and anti-government demonstrations, how NYS will be critical in their role when it comes to cooling it down.
Yes, imagine yesterday there were 14,692 members of NYS who qualified or graduated from there. It is impossible to actually absorb them all into the defense forces or the police. Then you imagine this number, thousands of young people with paramilitary training, including on firearms. What exactly are you saying? Well, it's just a question.
And what kind of training are they? That's a very hot potato, by the way.
On the Star, Ruto-Raila deal to hasten law review 14 years after the promulgation of the Constitution. Now, it would appear that probably we have the best formula with the Ruto working with Raila for us to actually consider the possibility of a referendum to amend some parts of the constitution. Proposals include creation of Prime Minister's office, official leader of opposition, that come with a NADCO report. The bid rekindles memories of doomed Building Bridges initiative of ex-President Kenyatta. Will Ruto and Raila be successful this time round?
Ile kitu katuni ilikuwa nasema jana, a crossbreed of opposition and government.
Ni mchanganyiko maalum.
Mchanganyiko.
Pia pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa The Star anaongea kuhusu bitter pill to swallow, new gizmos place men at center of birth control.
Hey, okay.
Wait. There's condoms, vasectomy, withdrawal and abstinence. This is on the front page of The Star.
As on the existing birth control methods.
And hormonal methods, there's injection, gel applied to skin, oral peel and skin patch. Wanaume, mutakubali haya? Fresh war in Mount Kenya as leaders take on Gachagua.
Usiguze Murima.
Usiguze Murima. Job scramble looms as commissions fall vacant. And finally, HR consultant reaping big from onion farming. This is Tuesday, so my gov pia iko kwenye ile gazeti.
Most definitely. On Business Daily, because I know there are other interesting conversations there. Matters motorists overpay 16 billion cash shillings in fuel deal with Gulf firms. But then if you get your hands on Business Daily, there's a story on page 6, pale chini. They talk about Bolt takes after Uber raises ride charges on drivers' pressure. Now, you remember about 2 weeks ago, I was telling you about this. If you have used either of these hailing apps, and unasikia dere anakuambia hapana, itabidi uniongezee kakitu. Now this is one of those conversations. Just briefly in context, they say ride-hailing firm Bolt has raised its ride charges, including the minimum fare, barely a week after rival Uber made a similar move to curb pressure from drivers who had protested its prices for months and resorted to setting their own rates in recent weeks. So wait to see if other competitors will also do the same. That is Business Daily in a nutshell as well. Kuna story pia pale on the front page, hapa hii story ya Starlink eyes internet mobile services on satellite upgrade. Hii itakuwa another hot potato this coming weeks.
All right. Finally, People Daily, Gen Z, why Ruto fees model must collapse, will it? Brave youth say expensive varsity model to rob the children of the wretched, of the earth, of their dreams of favor, in favor of the proletariat. Ile wadu wametumia hapo kwa front page. The People Daily. Mwanajaribu kurutisha. Anyway. Queries after exit of Help Boss. That's linked to that also. Matters of university funding. Secondary teachers down the chalk as schools reopen. A lot of education matters on the front page of the People Daily. Plus the jobs up for grabs in commissions. Scramble begins for planned positions after terms of commissioners come to an end. Will it be another opportunity to recycle the old guard? Yes. Sasa tuangazie masuala ya cartoons as we come to the end of this session. This is a cartoon on the Daily Nation. 14 years of checking executive excesses. We're marking 14 years since the promulgation of the new constitution. And it shows, these are caricatures of the 3 presidents who've actually experienced this constitution. And now they've been trying to navigate. Wanakanyaga hivyo wasikanyage. Hata sai William Ruto is still
they're walking on eggshells around it.
Yes, it started with Mwai Kibaki.
Yes.
Uhuru Kenyatta definitely experienced a lot of problems with the implementation of this constitution. He, we could say, is really the president who really implemented a lot of this constitution, including devolution. On the Standard rather.
Similar conversations. The first slide is a gentleman with a very huge kitambi. He's holding the new constitution, and the Kenyan carrying him is actually very happy, by the way. And Mbebak, you are very proud to be a Kenyan. But then on the next slide is a Mwananchi who is wearing tattered. And
this
on
is
top
the burden
of him,
implementation.
Yes, the burden of implementation, a huge bag of it. And on top of him, a caricature depicting President William Ruto. And anasema tuende mbele.
All right.
14 years later.
14 years later. And then now the big launch.
Yes.
This is the Star.
The plaques everywhere.
You know, we've been talking about all these plaques that the president has been launching across the country, many of them not implemented. Now, today he'll be launching another one, and that's Raila Odinga.
Alafu kesho uko Nyanza, anaenda kulaunch zingine. Si anaenda Nyanza kesho. Yeah.
Morara Kadaso will have a field day with this one. That's a Star.
Ule mtu anabebanga makasi for President William Ruto.
Akona kazi?
Ai, akona kazi.
All right.
Akona kazi.
Well, this is a big story, and we'll be beaming that event live from State House starting at 8 a.m. 5 presidents from Africa expected to attend this event as President William Ruto launches officially Raila Odinga's bid for the AUC chairpersons.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Well, we'll be discussing some of these and a lot more with my panelists after the break, so do stand by for that. And you can be part of the conversation through social media on X at TV47 News and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya.
Oh, yes. 22047 is our SMS number at TV47 News on X. Mine Ajaringita _ Coming up later on, matters biashara. Why should you take a mortgage? Stick around for that.
Hey there friends, welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism, how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m. The Grind, where business meets brilliance. It's not just about the ideas.
I was working as a shampoo boy. I used to wash clients' hair on the sink.
It's about making them happen. From big wins.
In primary school, when we would be asked what people want to be, I was categorical that I want to be a nurse.
To hard lessons.
The consoles change, the gaming equipment keep changing.
We cover it all. Tune in to The Grind, where every episode is packed with insights.
The person who is serving customers, always be a customer-centric.
Strategies.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
And stories to fuel your ambition. Don't just dream it, grind it. Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Jiunge nasi tunapoangazia safari za viongozi bora. kutoka kwa ushindi mkubwa hadi masomo magumu.
Wakati wetu kwamba wasichana si wa kusoma, ni wa kuolewa, ng'ombe ipatikane, wazazi wakuwe watajiri.
Tunashughulikia yote.
I wish I were a better investor.
My parents taught me how to look for things for myself.
Tazama Mfahamu Kiongozi, ambapo kila kipindi kimejaa maarifa, mikakati na hadithi za kukuza azma yako.
For me to succeed, I have to fight.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in? I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m. The Grind, where business meets brilliance. It's not just about the ideas.
I was working as a shampoo boy. I used to wash clients' hair on the sink.
It's about making them happen. From big wins.
In primary school, when we would be asked what people want to be, I was categorical that I want to be a nurse.
To hard lessons.
The consoles change, the gaming equipment keep changing.
We cover it all. Tune in to The Grind, where every episode is packed with...
All right, welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV 47 with me, Freddie Ndimuli. Time for the State of the Nation. This morning, we're privileged to have in studio, beginning on my immediate right, Dismas Mukua, political risk analyst. Good to have you back in studio.
I'm happy to be here.
Karibu sana. Robert Basil Ngui, MP at a constituency, also joins us this morning. Karibu sana.
Thank you and good morning.
And Pamela Odhiambo, former woman representative, Migori County. It's good to have you in studio today.
Happy to be here. Good
Karibu
morning.
sana. Let's start with the big news of the day. Of course, today marks the 14th anniversary since the promulgation of the Constitution. This is being 27th of August, 2024. A lot of discussions around this Constitution, the cost of it, whether or not it needs amendment. But probably just taking stock of where we come from and where we are, Dismas. There's a lot of discussion, even now, on the front page of the Star. They talk about the possibility that the combination or the alliance between Ruto and Raila will enable possibly the very first amendment to this constitution. All other attempts to amend the constitution have failed in one way or another. Do you think it's the right time to do it 14 years later?
Well, in my view, the 20 Constitution is a very solid document which gave Kenyans a breath of fresh air. And in my view, it's never early nor late to amend the Constitution or even amend the various acts of Parliament. Because the Kenyan Constitution is supposed to serve the Kenyan people. So if there are parts of the Kenyan Constitution that do not serve our national and public interest, obviously they must be amended. And we need to do now a very exhaustive audit, especially on the public expenditure. For instance, when you come to the role of elected leaders, there's an emerging view that probably Kenya has got so many elected leaders, and a number of people do not really appreciate what exactly they do. And then there's also a duplication of duties. Like, for instance, when you're looking at the national government, it's got infrastructure all the way to the village, and also the county governments have got infrastructure all the way to the village. And at some levels, you've got so many officers who do not seem to have a very clear mandate. So there's a lot of conflicts created by those officers. And then on the same note, the cost of administration. For instance, right now, when you look at this germane issue of bursaries, almost every elected leader has got a bursary, including even appointed leaders. And all of them are competing to give out those resources. But their major interest is not for students or pupils to attend school, but they use it for purposes of political capital. So even the cost of administration becomes very high, and then it becomes manipulative. So in my view, there are so many things that we need to do. However, this can only happen if it's being driven by national and public interest. And in my view, it must not be left to politicians, because the politicians will drive the agenda simply because they want to win the next election or simply because they're in power. It should be a people-driven agenda.
Okay. And Bonangui, if you look at the cartoon on the Daily Nation today, just paints a picture of how different leaders have been trying to navigate around the Constitution. There are other presidents, starting with President Mwai Kibaki, President Uhuru Kenyatta, and now President William Ruto, are just trying to tiptoe, and we do have the cartoon there, just to tiptoe around the Constitution. It's not been easy for these leaders to work with this Constitution. President Uhuru Kenyatta perhaps could be credited for the bigger chunk of having to implement this Constitution, which many have described as a burden. How do you think these presidents have fared in as far as implementing this document?
I think first, we need to appreciate that the Constitution has been there for how many years now? We're talking of 14 years.
Yes.
It's the high time to check what has worked, what has not worked. And just as what my brother said, there is high time to look at some of the clauses in the Constitution. I'll make a reference to the two-thirds gender rule. It appears to be more of a wishful thinking. I'm an advocate for gender equality. But apparently, the two-thirds gender rule, I don't think it is tenable or it's realistic in a way that some of the provisions in terms of the realities in our country is not possible to be able to achieve the two-thirds gender rule. And these are some of the issues which needs to be reviewed based on the realities on the ground. Number two, if you look at devolution, we devolved corruption as opposed to devolving services. And if you look at the way the money is being utilized at the account level, it's not done based on the needs of the people, but it's more about what the governor thinks should be done. And you find even the MCAs have no authority at all. They become like beggars in the county government. Myself, I'll be part of the group that will make an amendment. And one of the things I'm going to push is actually to review the devolved funds such that the money should go for development, 80%. 20% should be left for the governors either to pay salaries, etc. The way CDF is done. You find today now, there is very little to show with the money that is being devolved. You can even start with health services. Most of the health services have completely collapsed. And the simple reason is the governors, instead of being realistic, using the funds appropriately and for the needs of the people, they use it based on how they feel they should be done. You know, like a very handless public participation, you know, paying people to come for meetings. And you find this is money that is supposed to go to development, but it's used in the wrong ways. When it comes to the implementation of the Constitution, all presidents have taken oath of office and say they are going to uphold and defend the Constitution. But that is more of speaking, is a verbal statement as opposed to reality. I would talk of equity, inclusivity. That is at Article 10 of the Constitution, Sub-Article 2A and 2B. It talks of inclusivity in governance. Tell me which president has abided to this. None. Still, we talk of inequality. Services are being implemented based on where the president comes from. The tribal mindset are set in governance. Appointments are not done based on merits. It's done on rewarding basis. You reward your political cronies, you know, your friends, you know, your kinsmen. This is the kind of services in terms of appointment we have seen. When it comes to the actual governance, you find if you come from central, most services go to central. The cabinet secretaries, instead of serving Kenyans, they serve the appointing authority. And this is against the Article 10 of the Constitution.
Okay.
So there is so much to be done. And I would say, out of the 3 presidents, I would not say any of them did what we expected as Kenyans. And that's what even brought to the chaos of 2007, the one you saw. Of course, the 2010, that was after the 2008 fighting. But if you look at the acrimony and the agitation for leadership coming from people from different tribes, the simple reason everyone fights to be the president is because they know you are head of state, you have more entitlement than any other group. And that is against this document. Again, very few Kenyans understand the Constitution. Very few people even know the separation of powers between national government and the county government.
But you must agree that at least the level of comprehension has grown in the last few years. With Gen Zs, they have a better understanding of the provisions of the Constitution than other generations.
If you ask the Gen Zs, and I'm speaking as people's representative, we normally interact with them. You'll hear someone telling you, this hospital has no medication, this place has no dispensary, this one is lacking these services, water is not available in this household. Little do they understand, some of these services are being devolved. And that's someone who has gone all the way to the university. That is to tell you, they are not privy to the document in terms of understanding the contents of the document. And that's where you find as member of parliament, everything comes to you. Even some of them being devolved to services.
Before I come to you, Dismas, let's allow Pamela to chime into this. There's a balance between having a constitution that is implementable and having one that is very aspirational. Bonangui mentioned the fact that the 2/3 gender rule provision probably is one of those that are aspirational, but in terms of implementing it, 14 years later, we're still struggling with that. There are others, including the integrity of leaders, that we've not been able to get to that level. Do you think that probably we were just too idealistic in this constitution? Chapter on integrity, chapter 6, is something that appears beyond us as a country, that 14 years later, hiyo tuliweka kando.
Thank you very much, Fred, and good morning, Kenya. I think this constitution, by and large, it is good. I remember at the onset, 2012, there was this, 2010, 2012, there was this argument that there was some 20% of things which were not very nice in this constitution. And so to your question, like, is it time to relook at it and amend and make it better? I say yes, it is actually overdue. In other countries, they would look at their constitution almost between 8 to 10 years. And so if you went to America today, you will find that they have very many amendments that have been done, so that it serves the purpose of the day, because law or constitution is made for man and supposed to serve the needs of the population. So as the needs evolve, we need to adjust even our laws to be able to provide for those needs. And so it is overdue. I would support the issue of amending it, even correcting whatever somebody thought from the very beginning was not right. Now, coming to your question, actually, the balance between the implementability of our constitution and the ideals that there are, I think we have largely failed. One of the reasons is, according to me, yes, there are some of those suggestions or proposals in it that are ambiguous, and a clear path way of implementing them is not clear, like the case of the 2/3 gender rule. Mm-hmm. There have been a lot of issues and proposals, people saying like, you know, our politics and even going into leadership, there are those appointed positions, but there are also these political seats, which, especially in parliament, the achievement has become very elusive. It's just a mirage. Mm-hmm. And because our politics is driven by the parties, even the parties have failed to show goodwill, to really just get out of their way to see to it that when they are electing MPs, women reps, or MCAs, there is that balance. So at some stage, I remember we were proposing what we call zebra kind of listing, mm-hmm. so that if we have a county, say with 8 constituencies, can the parties that sponsor individuals there do it such that maybe 4 of the representatives, say to parliament, are female and 4 are male? You know, that way it would be achieved. But you see, now that it is democracy, allegedly, and everybody has to fight for their space, you find most of the time the ladies are actually disadvantaged, mm-hmm. due to many reasons. Our politics sometimes gets real violent, and by nature, yeah. Women abhor violence, though sometimes we are forced into it. And so there are many other reasons that make this, but others, there is just no clear mm-hmm. Pathway of how do we achieve it. Like for appointed positions, yes, we could say, based on the merit that he was talking about, which sometimes have also been neglected in our nation, I, as an executive, may be able to make sure that in my department there is that balancing. Because I believe today it's not like 30, 20 years ago, mm-hmm. when somebody would say we don't have qualified women. Today we have qualified men and women. Mm-hmm. And so when we are looking at the capacity, the competence, and all this, I believe we can get it from both genders. But somehow that goodwill, that makes my second point why I think our implementation has failed. The goodwill. Political goodwill? Political goodwill, okay. To just accept that we need to do this thing this way. By and large, it has been missing. Mm. And before I finish there, you see the case of integrity. You look at sometimes what happens when there are integrity questions. We have serious conflicts, and members of the public have been sometimes confused. What is the role of such bodies which have been established in our constitution, like EACC, DCI, the Auditor General? You know, when we have cases of lost money in this mm-hmm. country, then it plays out so clearly. The other day, somebody woke up and said, EACC has no right to stop anybody from being considered for a post. And yet we have this body which we have been looking up to unveil yes. all these corrupt deals that leaders make in their offices. So you see, by that time, you are wondering then, why is it there? Why should we have an institution which cannot have the mandate or even the tooth to bite? Okay. What is the issue? So the areas that need amendments, according to me, and a serious clarity. One, independence of the arms, the 3 arms of government as we have them. You know, the judiciary, the executive, the parliament. To what extent is this independence seen even through our constitution and the way, by the end of the day, decisions are made in this country? Who is checking who? We have seen this as a failure. The other one I've said is the many conflicts that seem to be playing around between the different commissions that this constitution have established and their roles. And how do we ensure that it is executed to the latter? So there's a lot that needs to be looked at.
And talking about political goodwill, there's an issue about delimitation of electoral units as provided in Article 89 of this Constitution, which provides that electoral units and boundaries will be reviewed after 8 years, but not after every 8 years, but not beyond 12 years. And we have very comfortably found a way of not doing that. And we defied the Constitution, and everyone seems okay. That in itself is a problem. Can we say that that problem emanates from the Constitution itself? Or have we just Kenyans, out of our own bad manners, decided there are some provisions of this Constitution we will not abide by?
I think the challenge has been that selfish interest in implementing the Constitution. For instance, we know that IEBC is supposed to be composed of people with very solid credentials. They say beyond reproach, like Caesar's wife. But taking a role at IEBC in Kenya today is suicidal, is a professional suicide. The probability of you completing your term at IEBC is almost zero. And how does that come into play? We come up with an organization called IEBC, which is supposed to deliver elections. But for some reason, if the outcome doesn't favor your interest and you've got political capital, you will push out people. Because how do we as a nation today thrive without an IEBC? There are a number of seats, many seats which have been declared vacant, but people are suffering because they don't have representation. Why? Because we have not come up with a way of filling those positions. And when you come up with a strategy of filling the positions through NADCO, interested parties will always rush to court. Like now understand the process has been stalled. So there are people in many constituencies, in many elective areas, who are just restless. So I think it's an issue of political goodwill. And if that vacuum serves people with political capital, then they're happy to maintain the status quo. It's only they only move when it gives them pain. But provided there are no pain spots, provided it's not inflicting pain, they are very happy. But there's an issue that I wanted to buttress that Mheshimiwa has raised here about this Katiba, this constitution. Majority of Kenyans have consumed bits and pieces of the constitution, but they don't have a full understanding of what this document is. And it's not just limited to the constitution. It's most of government policies. Like for instance, right now you talk about the new university funding model. Understand the position is that if you qualify for university today, you will go through all those 5 bands. But the conversation has been infiltrated by misinformation and disinformation. So people are just using various bits and pieces to drive their agenda. Even not long ago, we had the livestock bill, which is supposed to commercialize, livestock production in Kenya. But if you are unhappy with a certain provision, then you invade the place with misinformation and disinformation. In my view, that is the biggest threat to this constitution. That if you've got, say, relevant authorities that are unable to engage in policy communications, and then you've got various stakeholders who have no time to read and understand the various policies, then people who are unhappy with the changes will come and...
So it's back to an issue of communication.
It boils down to communication. Communication is the biggest challenge. But still talking about the 2010 Constitution, something that probably only happens in Africa, in Kenya, it's only in Kenya where you've got a very solid constitution that allows every Tom, Dick and Harry, or in this case, Mura, Nafula and Njeri, to stop the president from engaging in activity. Like for instance, if the president comes up with a policy position or makes an appointment that citizens are unhappy with, it's only in Kenya where you can actually go to the High Court and stop that, and the president will express his frustrations. In other parts of Africa, that one is unheard of. But I think the bottom line here really is how we manage our resources. In my view, the cost of administration in Kenya is so high that we spend a lot of resources in buying teas and coffees, administrative positions, instead of serving Murray's selfish interests.
Okay. Discussing the Constitution 14 years after the promulgation, today we mark that anniversary, 27th of August. Let's now take a break. We'll be back to discuss a lot more. You're watching Morning Cafe.
Hey there, friends! Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in? I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism, how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m. The Grind, where business meets brilliance. It's not just about the ideas.
I was working as a shampoo boy. I used to wash clients' hair on the sink.
It's about making them happen. From big wins.
In primary school, when we would be asked what people want to be, I was categorical that I want to be a nurse.
To hard lessons.
The consoles change, the gaming equipment keep changing.
We cover it all. Tune in to The Grind, where every episode is packed with insights.
The person who is serving customers, always be a customer-centric.
Strategies.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
And stories to fuel your ambition. Don't just dream it, grind it. Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Jiunge nasi tunapoangazia safari za viongozi bora.
Elation and optimism that Kenyans had on the new constitution. You can see the person carrying the president back then, a very happy Kenyan. But 14 years later, 27th of August 2024, the burden of implementation of the constitution is what is heavy on the back of this hustler in yellow and green. And the president pointing in another direction. Yes. Bwana Kiplagat, I'll give you an opportunity to comment on this before we move to other discussions on the constitution. The issue of implementing this constitution has been the biggest bone of contention. It is too expensive to some. It is too idealistic to many others. What is your assessment 14 years later? Is it time that we relook and see if at all we can reduce some of it, probably?
Good morning, our viewers. Maybe on the issue of the constitution, may I not say the new constitution because it is around 14 years down the line. Usually, even if you manufacture a car, you need to test. And once you test, you need to correct the pitfalls that comes from testing. I think the 2010 constitution we have tested, and we have found out that it has some issues and some problems that need to be fixed. The promoters of the constitution introduced some ways of changing the constitution that's a bit difficult, because there are some sections that you need to change through a referenda. There are some that you need to change through the parliamentary route. But to say to analyze, we are in a point whereby we actually need constitutional amendment. If you look at our behavior, because constitution is made for the man makes the constitution, and the constitution has to adapt to what the man is doing. If you look at our behavior for the last, for all the elections after the constitution, there is always the creation of offices that were not envisaged in the new constitution. One of it is the Prime Minister's office. Another one is you look the appetite for the official opposition leader. So this, we need to actually align our constitution to our behavior. So given that we behave in instances where in the governance structure it is not supported by the constitution.
Wouldn't that be worsening the problem? We're already talking of a very expensive constitution. The burden on the taxpayer is already heavy. Now we're talking about adding more offices to the same.
Of course, we are either way. Even if we don't change, we are adding. We are adding so that we can balance. You see, in Kenya, the problem is nobody wants to be in opposition, and everybody wants to be in government. And for those that are left in the opposition, they make the governance so difficult that you, at one way or another, you need to bring them on board. So, for us to be able, to adopt to that behavior, the only way is to align the constitution to our Kenyan behavior. And our Kenyan behavior, everybody wants to be in government. Okay. So we let the constitution absorb that. Otherwise, even if we cheat ourselves that we are going to do anything else, we shall continue doing that behavior which the constitution had not seen. So it is important that at this juncture, let us bite the bullet. Let us look at the clauses that don't support our Kenyan behavior, and we'll be able to amend either through the popular initiative or through the parliamentary route for the clauses that can be amended through the parliamentary route. Look at the issue of that gender rule, the two-thirds gender rule. The two-thirds gender rule, it is in our constitution. We are supposed to implement it, but Kenyans don't want it. So the best way is to amend and remove the two-thirds gender rule. Remove it completely. And then we move on. So there are so many issues that we need to align this constitution to our behavior. And
you'll already get into trouble with Pamela there next to you.
Of course, if we wanted...
suggesting that we remove that
part. Of course, if we wanted it, we would have done it. But look at even the scenario whereby sometimes even the Supreme Court rules that... was it the Supreme Court or the High Court rules that Parliament should be dissolved by not actually enacting that... that clause. But technically, even the women that have been brought on board, look at even the Senate, even the women that have been brought on the Senate to balance that. What are they doing? When it comes to voting on critical issues, they just talk and observe. They are not doing anything. So,
I'll give you an opportunity to respond to that. I know it's raised a very critical issue.
I really appreciate that approach. But I really don't think Kenyans don't want this this idea of third gender role. Kenyans have been talking about issues, inclusivity, equality, and it only happens that there was this issue of gender. For example, even as we sit here today, there are communities in Kenya that still feel marginalized. As we sit here today, the youth of Kenya still feel like they don't have enough space. So the real issue is that Kenyans want that equality. Kenyans, when we are talking about the two-third gender rule, we are talking about the history which has always neglected the views and the opinion of the other gender in what is happening at the decision-making table. So I think Kenyans want it. What we are observing, I think, is the lack of a clear pathway of implementing it, supported by strong political goodwill, because it is true that in our country, almost all decisions are made politically. Not ideologically. And that is what is affecting the implementation of some of these clauses. But I believe, I want to hear what all our men say about any particular issue. What about the women? What about our young people? How is it affecting all these people? All the people that are affected by the decision need to bring their issues to the table. So but let me help him somewhere. The concept of this nomination, after, and then you don't have the veto power to also vote. These are some of the things that need to be done away with. And as we are suggesting, let all our political parties, let all the political playground be level enough for everybody who can come up and be a genuine representative of the people, because some of these cases are not supported.
If you look at the cartoon, with the president actually shouldering, the Kenyans shouldered a huge burden of taxes. What the new constitution did brought more expenditures for this government. I would make reference to the 47 counties. Do we really need 47 governors, 47 counties? Do we need 47 senators? Do we need 47 women rep? The answer is no. If you look at United States, it has 50 states. And 50 states, by the expansive nature of the US, that is tenable to them. If you look at Kenya, Kenya is like a state in the US. And here we are
one of the smallest states.
Yeah, we are trying to inherit a system that is not, that cannot work in our country. And the effect of what we did is being felt by any Kenyan today. The new taxes that are being increased every single year is because of the inability to be able to meet the demands of the new constitution. If you look at, now we talked of the 2024 finance bill, which was rejected. Now, with the broad-based government, they want to bring again the same finance bill. Our country today, the budget is over 3 trillion. It was actually 3.8 trillion to be precise, which is more than the budget for Uganda, Tanzania combined. Why are we talking about such big budget and most of it going to pay salaries? It's because of an unrealistic constitution. And that's where we need to make amendment. One of it is to reduce the number of unnecessary positions. We don't need 47 county governments. We should be talking of the way we used to have 80 provinces. We can have something like that. And then we need to do away with all these senators, because it is completely...
Do away with the Senate or some senators?
We don't need all these senators. For example, I'll give an example. Here you find the governor is from a party. I'll talk of ODM, for example. The senator is from ODM. How realistic can this senator provide an effective oversight to a governor who they come from the same party? The answer is not possible. That is a paradox.
Are very radical.
And that's why we are saying some of these things needs to be relooked into. And it's a simple reason we are seeing since 2010, how many governors have been fairly impeached? None.
Yet devolution is perhaps the biggest gain the Kenyans can actually say they got from this.
The only gain I'll talk about, and I want to finish on, I'll make a reference, for example, the county where I come from. Since independence, if you take an example of infrastructure, since 1963, Machakos County has only been able to see tarmac road connecting constituencies, and not more than 10 kilometers. I talk of maximum about 10 kilometers through devolution. But before then, were only colonial highways. You know, this kind of inequality is what agitated for the new constitution. But the problem is, as I've said, the problem we have is state officers, talk of ministers. Instead of serving the country as per even the old constitution, where you talk of equity, inclusive in governance, they are there to serve the appointing authority. That's where the problem begins.
Now, Fred, the three politicians on my right have raised very fundamental issues. But in the interest of clarity, what is the purpose of our constitution? Number one, our constitution is supposed to offer the nation political stability. Number two, economic stability. And number three, security stability. That is the raison d'etre of the constitution. So we should ask ourselves, is the Kenyan constitution offering those three levels of stability? Now, if the three pillars, there's one which is a bit shaky, then we need to strengthen it. That is number one. Number two, Pamela has spoken about the two-thirds. And in my view, the person with the yam and the knife is the voter. Assuming every Kenyan understands the import of the two-thirds gender rule, when they go to vote during the general elections, then they can vote for a man or they can vote for a woman. So coming up with this idea of having a zebra thing, then you're saying that if a county has got 10 constituencies, then 5 will vote for men and then 5 will vote for women, in my view is unacceptable. If Mura in Mosocho wants to vote for a man, she'll vote for a man. If she wants to vote for a woman, let her vote for a woman. In any event, I don't know of any other country in the world, you know, including advanced democracies like US, UK, or India, or Brazil, that make it mandatory that you must now vote for a man, you must vote for a woman. I think every single Kenyan, if you're interested in an elective position, just demonstrate your capacity and competence. If you need to be loyal to the party leader for you to make your way, just go and be a sycophant, compete for that sycophancy and take up the position. But now telling me that to vote for people maybe based on their sex or on their birthday or on their tribe, I find it unacceptable. But the elephant in the room, these three politicians who are supposed to come up with the legal framework are the same people complaining about the status of the laws in Kenya. Yet, they're supposed to offer oversight, representation, and most important, come up with law. So it seems to me that Kenya, we are in a very difficult position because we have given the mandates to come up with these laws, and yet they're complaining as if they're members of the civil society, like the rest of the Kenyans. And finally, Honorable Ngui raised a very fundamental issue about how much money do we use for recurrent expenditure and how much do we use for development expenditure. Now, we spend up to 80% on recurrent and 20% on development. And the last point, when you spoke about devolution, there's a requirement that if you come from a particular county, no more than I think 70% of the employees should be from that county. But what the county governors have done, almost 99% of the people working in the various county governments are members of the local ethnic community. So you wonder whether devolution is in fact promoting national cohesion or whether devolution is actually entrenching tribalism.
Okay, and I'll ask you, ladies and gentlemen, because I know we can talk about the constitution till the end, but I wanted us, because even during the break I could overhear you and the conversation was about education and the university funding model. I'd want us to focus on that also. And as we continue, of course, we'll keep on making reference to the constitution because it is an overriding document that we talk about. And Article 53 of the constitution talks about every child having a right to be free and compulsory basic education. Now, even when you talk about funding for education, I know the conversation is about university funding, but generally, funding for education in Kenya is a big issue. And despite it being the biggest spend in the budget, over 650 billion shillings, we're still having a lot of problems. Salaries for teachers are a problem. Capitation to schools is a problem. Even payment for intern teachers who are overseeing junior secondary school is a problem. Now, of course, the elephant in the room, the new university funding model is a problem. Now, when it comes to the university funding model, and I know some may defend it, others not, there's the issue of possible discrimination, which could also find a problem in the Constitution, that now we're looking at people based on how much your family earns, whether or not you have good relationship with your family, to band you either in band 5 or band 1, because you're talking about household income. And is there a possibility that we could be in defiance of the Constitution in the approach that we are taking? When I keep like to go first, I think then we'll come to you.
Thank you very much. I think looking at the funding model currently is an hot issue that even the president had to intervene personally so that he can hear what the students and the young generations are saying about it. Looking at it in totality, we need, first of all, before even we go to the model, to ask ourselves, can Kenya afford free education, both in basic education and higher education? Your guess is as good as mine. The answer is a big no. We can't afford, because looking at the portfolio currently...
Even for basic education?
Yeah, because looking at the portfolio currently, we are at 650 billion in terms of what we are spending in education. If, for practical sake, even if you look at our laws, is that there should be free secondary education. Free secondary education in day schools. Is it free? No. Whereas now the fees went to 9,000. Now I've seen some fee structures. Now they are going to around 15,000. So we cannot afford anything that is free in terms of education, because if we are currently at 650 and we want to fund free education, it will reach whereby in a region of 1.2 trillion. If we are collecting, unless you come from Mars, if we are collecting around 2.4 currently, 2.4 trillion, maybe if we improve in the current structure, we are supposed to be. But now with the finance bill not knowing even where the tail or head is, chances are we might collect maybe 2.5 trillion, just an improvement of around 100 billion. So to say that you can wake up one day and actually budget half of your ordinary revenue on education, with all these problems that is happening in Kenya, that is a big lie. So let us bite the bullet and say that we cannot be able to fund free education. Now, if you look at the discussion that is going on, I've seen, Kenyans are very simplistic, especially, I can't say the civil society, but those ones who are not in the kitchen to decide the model, they are very simplistic. They wake up and say, oh, now let us amalgamate these bursaries. We have CDF 20 billion, you have CGI, they even say they have county bursaries. Of
but
course,
CDF is part of that 650 billion.
Of course, if you say that you are amalgamating bursaries, counties will disappear. They won't donate anything because it is not in the structure to do bursaries. In CDF, you can donate, you can budget from 0 to 40%. So when you say let us amalgamate these bursaries, the total you can get is maybe 30 billion. Does this country lack 30 billion to inject into free schooling in our normal normal capitation? No. So let us say that we cannot be able to fund as a country free education. Now what do we do? What we do is that sometimes under the social responsibility, because every Kenyan, in terms of in terms of the economic well-being, all of them are not the same. There are some who are struggling. There are some who can be able to afford. So the funding model was created in such a way that as Kenyans who love this nation, let us assist those ones that are more vulnerable to be in band 1, and for those who by the grace of God they can be able to pay something, let us graduate up to band 5. Now, the only problem that we have in that banding model is that we tend to default. What this system has done, and we have seen it has created a lot of mathematics. And I want to tell, the those ones who are designing the problem, the model, let them be simple. Let them, don't even go to a certain situation where you have to do a calculus to determine to determine where you need to put someone. Let us be simple. Okay. I can look at you. May I finish? I can look at you and determine how well are you, because sometimes you say that you earn 50,000. You can be having 50,000 in Nairobi, my friend, and even affording pass fare, leave alone basic education and things like that. So it is so complex. What I was looking at is that let the bands be as close as possible, so that there is no big difference. Let them be as close as possible, and then for anybody you cannot be able to determine, instead of defaulting to band 5, you can default to band 3 or band 2, so that you don't have a lot of complaints. But in terms of Kenyans being able to fund education, we should continue looking at a way of funding education. We cannot afford free education. And may I finish? Let us not look at NGCDF bursaries. I can tell you 80% to 90% goes to basic education.
And we'll come back to that, because after the speakers Kamukunji, a lot changed.
Around 10%. Okay, you don't enter into politics. You might not finish. Around 10%.
But this is a political show.
But it happened.
Around 10% goes to universities and colleges. The reason as to why we do that is that we have an organization called HELP, which is supposed to give loans and bursaries to university students and TVETs. Those are supposed to be taken care of, while we try to use the bursaries to manage the issue of basic education, the secondary education, which is a bit nasty. So you cannot be looking narrowly at one aspect where you have the problem, and you start blaming NGCDF bursaries.
But at the end of the day,
so small.
At the end of the day, two students sitting in one class, my desk mate could be paying way less for the same course that we are studying. Is there an issue of discrimination? And because of time, allow us to move a bit faster.
No, my last shot. You cannot blame your problems in your family on flies that are just around the kitchen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder who these flies are.
You did
Ndimuli, before we come to the discrimination, allow me to bring Kenyans back to the fundamentals. What are we talking about? Funding education. So the question is, what exactly are we funding? Why do we need money in schools and our institutions? We need the money, for example, for infrastructure, a place where our children can sit, the facilities that they can use, laboratories, libraries, and other learning materials and equipments. And of course, servicing those who are facilitating them. Now, having said that, I want to remind Kenyans that, it is true that the population has highly increased and our children are many. And that calls for the many teachers that we have in the classroom. Way back during the President Kenyatta's period, somebody could say that people were less, those who are going to school, and then maybe the money was enough, because some of them went to school, they were even given books and all that, and they learned. So we moved on and moved on. I remember when I was to go, I think the year I went to my second year, around, that must have been 1992, 93. And President Moi introduced the concept of cost sharing in universities, and it has continued to where we are now. Now, the question of funding education, here I want to beg to disagree with my colleague, Member of Parliament here. The main problem, according to me, as I have been analyzing this thing over the years, given what we need to fund, we decided to distribute the resources that are supposed to fund education to very many pockets. And in the process, I come back to his statement. he was talking about the administrative cost. So some of that money that is just supposed to go direct to the student is still facilitating, say, the NGA and GCDF GAF board and the administrators at the national level. You know, when you think about GAF and even the county is talking about, I think they have some budget of around 200 million for scholarships and bursaries at the governor's desk. And you see all these monies, when you look at the administrative cost, some money is lost there. Other monies are lost just due to mismanagement. Instead of sending that money to the right needy student, maybe Pamela is funding a friend in Ndimuli who campaigned for her and things like that. And this is something that I think the proponents of the consolidation of all these funds, according to me, they are right. And if we have people at the consolidated fund kitty who are honest and genuine just to fund education, I believe to some extent we can help our kids go to school. Even if they were to pay, they would not pay as much. Having said that, the component of discrimination that you are talking about, even without this model, in Ndimuli, the practical experience in this country has been that people have been still suffering this discrimination. And especially the real targeted people that I think the government should be even very much concerned about. The orphan, all those people who are poor, totally unable to raise whatever school fees that they can be requested to pay. Some of them have actually been suffering. And I want to be honest and talk from my own personal experience. As a women's rep with some little money in the name of GAF, some colleagues confronted me and were like, it is us who campaigned for you. You know, dead people. I was so passionate about the orphan. Dead people don't vote. And I'm like, now, friends. These are some of the things that Kenyan students and families have suffered under what has been going on. And therefore, when we are talking about this model, according to me, it is better to give more money to the very needy students and graduate it like that according to the level of need. I think to that extent, I agree with this model. And just to give you facts which we allude again as Kenyans, sometimes we are too quick, very impatient to listen. And maybe sometimes it's because the so-called public participation fails, communication fails to reach people in its simplistic manner that everybody else can understand. And that's to that extent I agree with him. Because you see, when you talk, for example, the other model where they were talking about differentiated unit cost, you know, a layman would not understand what that is all about. But you see, this one, they have tried to simplify it. So they are saying the very needy family or the very needy child is put in band 1. What happens here in band 1? I will read for you verbatim what is there. The household, there are 3 sources of funding, or the sources of fund. The HELB that he mentioned, then there is University Funding Board, which has got money. Now, the roles are clear. HELB now only gives loans. The University Funding Board gives scholarship or grants, in other words, and then the household tops up. Now, apart from that loan, there is an upkeep for the student. So, what happens in band 1? That very needy student will be given 70% scholarship of whatever amount is required, and then given 20% of that fees as loan, and an upkeep of 60K for the whole year. So as in 30,000 for every semester. And in band 5, I will not read all the others, band 5 to a student who comes from a place where their parents are able to chip in more will be given 20% as scholarship, 45% as loan, 25% from the household, 45%
for the scholarship, and then 30% of as loan with 40K as an upkeep for that student per year. So if we look at it carefully, and if that model works carefully, you will find that the discrimination, according to me, will be lessened.
Okay.
And as they said, where I have, when we talk of testing the model, many things could have gone wrong, but I have tested it myself, and I've known if a student feels carefully what actually their household get, they will fall in across. Okay. There have been cries, but they are willing to be appealed, and Kenyans will get education.
Yet the outcry is so loud. And
yes, it is so loud because you see, this thing has been going, the testing of this module and even that application. So
shouldn't we have tested the model first before rolling it out?
It's misleading Kenyans when she talks of the percentages she's mentioning about. I want to clarify, if you talk of the band 1, they get 95%. The total, the amalgamation from the scholarship and from HELB. So the parents are supposed to raise 5%. So when she's talking of the upkeep and the loans, it means in principle like the money is completely catered. And there will be no outcry if that was the case. So if you find the band 1, these are parents earning less than 6,000 per month. And majority of Kenyans with increased poverty, they fall under band 1. So you find the 5%, very few families can even raise that 5%. If you come to band 2, the government contribution, both loan and scholarship, is 90%. So the parents are supposed to raise 10%. And that is a family earning an income of about 23,000. If you talk of band 3, that is a family earning 70,000 income per month. The government caters 80%, meaning the scholarship and also the help.
No, that
so
is
the family is supposed to raise 20%. No. I'm talking of on empirical, with the support, because that's why I'm telling she's limited.
Because I think the issue is
because if you talk of band 4,
as you
band
said,
4 is
calculus.
a family earning 120,000 income per month, and the government contributes 70%, meaning help and a scholarship. So the family is supposed to raise 30%. Band 5, who are now the rich, the better off, that is a family earning 120,000 and above. And the government gives 60%. That is both loan and scholarship. So that family is supposed to raise 40%. Now, when you come to the analogy, what brought to where we are today, I'll make reference to where Kenya was. Let's say 15 years down the line, before these new models were introduced. Kenya had about, like I'm talking the time when I left the University of Nairobi, Kenya had about 10 universities. 6 were public, 4 were private universities. Today, Kenya has about over 60 universities, 30 which are public universities, another 30 that are chartered universities, and another 30 who have letters of interim. So if you look at that percentage of the increased universities and also reduce entry level, myself and Indy, if you can recall, the time we joined University of Nairobi, the minimum entry for university was B plane. In my school, only 5, including myself, managed to get B plane and above. Now today, the entry level is C+, and we have increased universities. What does that mean? More students who demand or who need to be supported by government are getting themselves to the universities. So what if you want to solve that problem, let's not talk of hypothetical suggestions. We need to collapse some of these unnecessary universities. Let's also revise upward the entry level from C+ to something like B plane, so that those who fall below B plane can go to technical universities. Today, Kenya needs skilled manpower. But if we all focus on degrees, you'll have an education system which is reduced quality or poor quality, where everyone has a degree, but there are no jobs to accommodate these people. If you talk of the system the way it was, in my time, we used to get, like university was subsidized. What I used to get from the bank was basically money for upkeep and the money for accommodation.
And that's what
Today,
now.
you find the way she's explaining, it appears like it's a very working model. If it was working, there will be no outcry. Again, this is adding a very heavy burden to already a poor country that is struggling. And that is why you find so many students are not able to continue with the learning. We are speaking as people's representative, where we find so many students coming with university fee structure, requesting for support, even with the bursary. Very few can even continue with learning. And that's why we need to rethink realistically, not just to speak for the sake of airing our views, but resonate with the reality and come up with a formula that is working for Kenyans. Understanding today is not the way Kenya was 15 years down the line.
Yes. Fred, I'm actually shocked by Honorable Ngui's logic on education in Kenya. And it's very shocking that this kind of logic is coming from an elected leader. Kenya is known all over the world as supplying top human capital. In fact, it's one of our unique selling propositions. When you go to Rwanda, Burundi, US, UK, you'll find graduates of the Kenyan education system, 844, offering leadership. It's therefore shocking for Honorable Ngui to suggest that because you have indicated that if you've got C+, you can go to university, and based on the politicians' incapacity to offer leadership, now let's take it to B-, or even let's take it to B, it's actually shocking. Instead of him coming up with policy proposals to solve, to offer leadership, he's now going for the low-hanging fruits that limit the number of universities. We need to have as many universities as possible.
Even when you can afford them?
Provided they're delivering on value. Why we not be able to afford them? It's because of a lack of leadership. We are supposed to have as many, give me time. We are supposed to have as many universities as possible so that we can even promote Kenya as an education destination. If you go to the UK, one of their biggest exports is education. People crave for UK education. So you cannot say that we reduce the number of universities, maybe because there's a crisis in leadership at the National Assembly and at the university management. Elected leaders are supposed to offer solutions. They're not supposed to run away from responsibility. Number one, we've got about 78 universities in Kenya, contrary to the figures given. We are supposed to empower them and so that they specialize. Right now, you have every university offering every program. We need to have specialized universities. And then number three, politicians become uncomfortable when we say all these bursaries given by various elected leaders, can you put them in one basket? Why do they become uncomfortable? It's because they use bursaries as a political tool, as a political weapon. It gives them political capital. You'll find that somebody in a constituency who is connected to all the politicians, their sons and daughters would receive multiple bursaries, but the ones actually in need will not receive it, which is the why we need to streamline. The responsibility of an elected leader, especially an MP, oversight, representation, and coming up with legal. It's not distributing bursaries. Right now, every elected leader, instead of demonstrating their capacities in their core mandates, they want to use CDF, all these funds, to gain political favors. It's actually a sad day for Kenya. And if you're not careful, that is how Rwanda, that is how Tanzania, that is how Uganda, they're going to overtake Kenya. If we do not attack this thing and do a root cause analysis, we'll be in big trouble.
Allow me 60 seconds just to
Finally, the Honorable the Speaker of the National Assembly, Wetangula, has activated a process which will harmonize all these things. But guess what? The first people are complaining.
Their voting.
Yeah, but who is the first person complaining? When you're coming up with legislation to take Kenya to the next level, our elected leaders that we have given mandates are the ones who want to put hurdles. We cannot accept this state anymore.
I want to tell you first, my brother, I think he's an activist. The problem we have with activists, they are never realistic. I'll give you time to speak.
Stating facts.
If you talk of UK, the reason why people are going to the UK is because of quality of education. Kenya today, that quality is not there.
No.
You saw the other day, even employers making reference to the University of Nairobi, saying we are only picking For example, I saw an advert where they were looking for HR graduates,
why
and they are saying specifically, why are you picking certain universities?
No.
If you allow our university to be diluted, today we are talking of medical practitioners. The other day you saw doctors striking for the first time in history.
And
Because they can't be absorbed by the economy.
No.
So let's be realistic. My brother is just becoming an activist. You know what you are talking about? Myself, I'm an advocate of good education. Because I know with good education, you get value of those who have gone to school. And to finalize, when he talks of duplication of bursaries, I don't agree on duplication.
Okay.
I'm one of the few people who are saying we need to harmonize. But the issue is, if government wants to do away with the bursary, the best way to do is to provide free education. But my question is, if they are unable even to remit capitation money to schools, every single year, we are moving from one financial year to another financial year when schools have arrears. The government is not able to remit all.
Will you support
So how will the government be able to fund free education?
Will you support the proposal to amalgamate?
If only free education is provided to all learners.
So, may I support my brother. The only model that can work is, because also us, this bursary thing is giving us nightmares. We want to sleep, and to serve in other spheres in our constituency. So if you can remove the burden of bursaries as one of our luggages that we are carrying, so long as you promise practically that education will be free, that one we have no problem, because we were actually sorting the issue of trying to make us as many people as possible to afford education. Secondly, let us also be factual, and let us also be data-driven. Let us not be driven by emotions like my sister and my brother.
No.
Let us not be emotional. I want to give you facts that are not debatable. If I pick my constituency, for example, like Soy constituency, I have 18,500 students who are day scholars in secondary. Let us leave even the university bit alone. We have 18,500. The average fee is 12,500 for day scholars. That one gives me that for me to offer through bursary, free day school secondary, I'll need 200 million. Now, secondly, I have 7,500 who are in day schools, who are in boarding schools. Boarding schools, we pay between 40,000 to 53,000, depending on the categorization of that school. So assuming we categorize to 40,000, I will need around 300 million to offer free boarding secondary schools. That amounts to 500 million on secondary school alone in Soy constituency. How much do I have for bursary? The maximum I can give for bursary is 50 million. 50 million, I can tell you, is 10% of that requirement. But here, may I finish? Here we are wasting time talking as if there is something called bursary that if we put them in one basket, it will offer a medicine to free education in Kenya. The answer is bursaries don't form more than 10% of what is of the requirement in terms of offering free secondary. So you need to be telling me, as you amalgamate all of them, you need to be telling me where is the 90% coming from.
Okay.
If we don't solve that equation, this others is just, I can tell you, is just reasoning emotional.
No.
Let us also try in this country. I started by saying, can we afford education in Kenya? The answer is a big no, because we require 50% of our ordinary revenue to be able to offer free education in Kenya, which is not possible. So even the issues of bursaries, it will not sort our problems of free education.
No,
so let us not be very emotional. Let us be driven by facts.
Excuse me, Indimuli, and let me plead with my fellow colleagues. Stop branding each one of us according to your thinking. We are not emotional. And I wanted to clarify a point raised by MP Yatta.
Yes.
You are saying I'm misleading the nation. I am not. You
Because
talked of
I'm using-
90%.
I'm using
Listen,
data.
listen. The data you have, the most accurate and the
I'm a
latest is
scholar,
what I'm
that's
reading
why I'm
to
using-
you. No.
I use it in-
Listen,
Okay.
the data you may be having may be of yesterday, but listen, you talked of 95%. And I want to state again, I said what is happening in band 1. 5% comes from the household.
And that's what I say.
Yes, but why were you saying I'm misleading the nation? I'm saying the 5% that comes from, I have an example of one very needy student who is in band 1. And for the course that is going to do IT, this child will only be required, that 5% from the household is actually 6,000 per semester. Okay? And then the 70% that comes from the government in terms of scholarship. Then 25% of that money comes from the government still as loan. That is the breakdown I was
That
giving.
comes 95.
Yes. And so
You're in agreement.
we are in
Think that's a
agreement,
different
and
interpretation.
I was trying to clear that I'm not misleading the nation. I am actually reading statistics.
Let me ask
and even
you, you know,
what
the reason why I
the
said
president
you are
talks.
misleading-
Wait, I'm not misleading.
So I want to correct you.
Kindly, you don't correct me because you are talking of things that I don't understand. That part of that 25% contains a 60K, which is supposed to be the upkeep for the student. So I'm imagining even a total orphan who has no parent, no guardian, no anybody to pay that 6,000 per semester. Out of the 30,000 that the student requires to upkeep themselves at the university, they can even sacrifice that 6 and pay for themselves. So what I'm telling Kenyans is, we are all Kenyans. And making people fear the fact of taking this loan or this help from the government, that the government is demanding for too much. If we are saying that we cannot afford free education, now here is a government who is offering more support in terms of scholarship to the student who is needy. And the cost sharing is brought to the level of 5%, 20%, or something like that. So I think we need to be patient and understand this thing and get it right and move our country forward.
Okay.
But again, what we are saying about the CDF, the conversation here is not just about the CDF. We are talking about all the other pockets of funding, because even in the ministry, there is still some scholarships that are held in the ministry. There is money for infrastructure that is held for the ministry. These people,
I'll give each one of you,
excuse. The budget you passed or you rejected has got some budget that is supposed to do infrastructure. But what do our MPs say? The CDF is also doing some infrastructure in school. So you see, if all this infrastructure can actually be done, go to Denmark today as we sit here. All the schools are built and equipped in a similar way. So it leaves the citizen with only the choice, brother, I have to be in to these places. And I'm an educationist and I've been part of this parliament.
Yes.
We are talking about.
Everyone has a right to opinion. I'll give you.
Yes, I'm talking about the practicality. What we are saying, why are we funding? Why are we paying money in the education? Why are we paying money to schools and institutions? We are funding it because we need these equipment. So if we can provide all these equipments, ideally education can be free in our nation.
And I have only 5 minutes left. I will give each one of you 60 seconds for your final comment. I know CDF is a hot potato. Let's start with you.
Fred,
just a minute.
It's very disappointing that these members of parliament are behaving in a very unparliamentary manner. When they are not able to engage in a conversation, they say that you are introducing activism or emotion, yet they are not able to present material facts. It's because of such
the material we have provided, you are not disputing.
No, you need to calm down. Now you are heckling instead of giving me a minute.
You only have 60 seconds.
Instead of them offering leadership, they are just describing the problem and failing to do root cause analysis. You know, they've said that we've introduced the emotion and activism. Yes, they've not rebutted by giving concrete information. And finally, as a nation, I think it's our responsibility to work hard, promote Kenya as an FDI destination, export our talent, and also catalyze, opportunities to export our teas and coffees. Because when we do that, even the conversations we are having, it will be very easy to offer free education. And one wishes that instead of these elected leaders misleading the nation, they would work towards promoting Kenya as an FDI destination. They would promote in catalyzing our talent to go all over the world and creating new markets abroad.
Thank you so much, Dismas Bonangui.
You know, when my brother says that we are becoming unparliamentary, he has not been to parliament. That's number one. Number two,
you're sure about that?
Number two, we are scholars. We are not politicians. Some of us, we are experts on development. We have just joined politics to serve, not to serve ourselves. So I wanted him to have that information before he brands us as politicians.
Then we should have behaved in a very superior
No, but that's why I have evidence.
manner.
I was giving evidence. You see, when you try comparing Denmark, population are living in abject poverty. So those are uncomparable scenarios. And that's why we are trying to assist them with information. Because none of them has data here. They just
You're supposed to assist
on
yourself.
hypothesis. And that's why I was trying to be as realistic as possible.
No, Fred, he has to assist
you
himself
see, for him,
first.
for her, she talked of upkeep. And then she said that amount of upkeep comes from 30% that is coming as scholarship from government.
I just broke down
But
your
there's something she did not
95%.
understand. Me and myself during the University of Nairobi, the university had hostels where we could even meet money for accommodation. And the money that was being required for us was so little. Today, most of these universities have no accommodation. And most of students are looking for accommodation from the private investors. And that's why they are unable even to meet the cost. So I'm trying to be as realistic as possible because I live in my country and I've lived in those countries I'm talking about.
Thank you so much.
So I'm talking of a point of information, not point
All of us
lack
are informed,
information
brother.
and being
You
an
can't dispute
hypothetical
our information.
Thank you. Your 60 seconds,
Yes,
Bonangui.
yes, Indumule, you know, the problem with our far left and far right is that these are like spectators who are watching a football game between Arsenal and Man U somewhere in Old Trafford or London. And they have so many ideas on what should happen in the field, or now that ball is supposed to be played, or now it's supposed to be scored. But if you bring my sister and my brother to the field, even kicking a ball will be a problem. So you can imagine the arguments. They are arguing in a theoretical sphere where everything is in theory. And they are even comparing Kenya with the developed countries. Let us be facts. Let us be driven by facts. One thing we need to start is to be able to cost education in Kenya. Once we have arrived at the cost, because currently with all these problems, we are spending 650 million. 650 million billion, we still have problems in terms of CSS, in terms of, we have so many problems that you cannot even enumerate. So, for them to be very practical, let us have a team to be able to cost free education in Kenya. Once you have costed free education in Kenya, you tell us in terms of amalgamation of the bursaries, how much? Maybe you will have 30 billion if you collect a lot of money. You know, let us be practical. So out of the other requirement of maybe you need to add another 600 billion, if you can see you can sort your problem by amalgamating 30 billion, it will sort your problem well and good. You come to the table. Once we have costed, then we now tell ourselves, where are we going to get this money? Are we going to establish another housing levy fund, or are we going to establish what fund? So because we need money, and the resource envelope is as little as you know. Even the problems that we have, I doubt. So once we have costed, if you can come to the table and tell us, bring your 20 billion bursary, bring your NGAF 1 billion, bring Sijui governance, bring your 5 billion, we have 30 billion. The government is going to bring another additional 570 billion on the table, and education will be free. We shall pass that legislation in one day.
Okay.
Indimule, thank you for this opportunity, and my colleagues, with all the due respect, I'm even getting lost because these are the representatives of the current government, part of the elected leaders. And me and him that they are talking of being extreme, we are actually supporting the funding model. We are no, we know.
We are not
Wait.
the funding model. You are
No.
talking about CDF.
Wait, let me finish. We are supporting the funding model, and we are struggling to explain to Kenyans how this funding can be done. We acknowledge what they are saying, that according to them now and everybody else, we have to fund education. So the question is, how do we fund it? I think that is what we are discussing here. It has nothing to do with the CDF. They are becoming emotional because they are holders of the CDF, which we know they make more discriminative. And some of us have been part of that system, and some of us are still the system of education. Even as I sit here today, my friend, if you people were using that CDF the way you are claiming here, I would not be shouldering the burden of paying fees for 10 orphans in my village. And listen.
The show is done.
And what I'm saying to Kenyans, as a parting shot, if I may call it, let us be patient to listen to each other and come up with actually solutions. When I quote Denmark and those other developed countries, you know, Kenyans, sometimes we get really confused. When it comes to issues, ICT and the computer world, we want to be like America, when we don't even have internet in most parts of our country. When it comes to issues funding education, now we are very poor. Let us not double speak. What I'm saying is that we are funding education to make facilities available for our learning to get that quality. If our government can concentrate on providing those facilities directly in all our institutions, then even if the citizen would have to pay, they would pay very little. Okay. And that is what I want Kenyans to take away from me. Let us study this model. Let us understand where there is a problem. Let us all contribute to making it better than just saying no and then there's nothing to offer.
Thank you so much, Pamela Odhiambo, former woman representative, Migori County, for your very robust contribution to this. Dismas Mokua, political risk analyst, Basil Robert Ngui, MP Yata, and David Kiplagat, MP Soya. Santeni sana. It's been a very invigorating and well-engaging debate, matters education, and of course, the fact that we are marking 14 years since the promulgation of the Constitution 2010 today. A lot of other things coming up later.